Okay, we are going to do some addition with our decimal board today, and we're going to start with putting the crown on our unit so that we can um, keep oriented to the unit there. And I'm starting with 1 and 26 hundredths. So I've placed a unit, 1 unit in the units place. I'm now putting 2 in the tenths place and 6 in the hundredths place. Okay, and now I'm going to place my second addend, starting with 2 units. I'm going to put that a little further down. 2 in the units place, 4 in the tenths place, and 5 in the hundredths place. Okay, and because we are adding, we are going to put all of it together because adding is putting together. And then we're going to count it up and see how much it makes. And we want to start with the hundredths place. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, when we get 10 hundredths, we're going to trade that in for 1/10, and that goes in the tenths place. So now we have 100th in the hundredths place. So we'll record that. And now I have to remember I have an extra in my tenths place. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the tenths place. And then I need to bring down that decimal point before recording my 3 units. Okay, and that's how it looks on the decimal board. Okay, so we're just going to do a few more examples of addition with decimals. And you can do these on paper along with me. And let's start with 2 and 3/10 plus 1 and 8/10. So let's think about that in terms of the way we would always do dynamic addition. We would always start with the smallest category, which is, in the past, usually units. But we don't, we actually have a smaller category than units. We have the tenths here. So that's where we're going to start. And 3 plus 8, we know that that is 11. And 11/10, we know that 10 of those tenths are going to get traded in for a unit, and that 1/10 would be left. So that is what we record. And then we want to also bring down that decimal point, and we want to come over to our units, but we have something to remember here. We traded in 10/10 for 1 unit. So we're holding that 1 unit in our minds when we add our units together. So we have 2 plus 1 plus the 1 in our head makes 4. So 2 and 3/10 plus 1 and 8/10 make 4 and 1/10. Okay, let's come over here and do another one. Let's do 532 thousandths plus 179 thousandths. So again, we always want to start addition with our smallest category. And in this equation, the smallest category would be the thousandths. So we're going to take a look at our thousandths place where we have 2 plus 9. That is 11. So just like we did in the previous equation, we're going to take 10 of those thousandths to trade in. and 1,000th will be left. When we trade in those 10,000ths for 100th, you could make a little mark here, but I think most of you can just hold that in your heads. And so we'll have 3 plus 7 in our hundredths place, and that's 10 plus the 1 in our head makes up 11 again. I keep giving us 11s. So again, we're going to record 1, and 10 of those 11 hundredths are going to get traded in for a tenth. So keep in your mind that you have 1 extra tenth here. And in the tenths, we had 5 plus 1 plus the 1 in our heads makes a total of 7. And then we're going to bring down that decimal point. And then in the units, we had 0 plus 0. So that'll be 0. Okay, let me try to give you one that doesn't have an 11 in it. Ah, undo. I'm not very good at the erasing part of this. There we go. Goodbye. Okay. Let's see. How about 2 and 47 hundredths plus 29 hundredths. So we're going to start in our hundredths place. That's our smallest category. 7 plus 9 is 16. So we're going to record the 6, and the 10 gets traded in for 1/10. So we have 1/10 in our minds. In our tenths place, we have 4 plus 2, that would be 6, plus the 1 in our heads makes 7. Bring down the decimal point. In our units, we have 2 plus 0, that'll be 2. So our answer is 2 and 76 hundredths. Okay, one more. Let's do 438 thousandths plus 258 thousandths. Okay, so we have in our smallest category, which is the thousandths place, we have 8 plus 8, and that makes 16. So we're going to record the 6, and the 10 thousandths get traded in for 100th. Hold that in your mind. In the hundredths place, we have 3 plus 5, that's 8, plus the 1 in our head makes 9. Nothing to carry over this time, nothing to trade in. So we can look at our tenths place where we have 4 plus 2, that is 6. Bring down the decimal point, and in our units place, we have 0. Okay, happy practicing dynamic addition with decimals. Okay, we're going to do some subtraction now with the decimal board. So we have 578 thousandths. So I'm going to place my 5 in the tenths place, and I now need 7 in the hundredths place. And 8 in the thousandths place. These discs are very fiddly. One more. Okay. And now, because we're doing subtraction, we're actually going to be taking away 187 thousandths. So we want to start with our thousandths place. That's our smallest category. And we're going to take away 7 thousandths. 1, 2, make sure you can see those. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we are going to have 1,000th remaining. And that's what we record. Now, in our hundredths, we need to take away 8. So you might already see the problem here, but let's go ahead and see what happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, we can take away 7, but we need to take away 8. So what can we do to get more hundredths so that we can complete the subtraction? Yeah, we're going to take this tenth and we're going to trade it in for 10 hundredths. That might take me a minute. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so after the trade in, we now have enough to complete the subtraction. So remember, we took away 7. We need to take away 1 more to make 8. And now we can count up to see how much is left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we'll record that we have 9 in the hundredths place. And now we're going to have to remember something about our tenths. We started with 5 tenths, but now we only have 4. And we take away 1, and there will be 3 left. And then we bring down that decimal point. And in our units, we had 0 minus 0, so that is still 0. So our answer is 391 hundredths. Okay, we are going to practice some subtraction on paper using decimals. So you can go ahead and do these right along with me on your paper. Uh-oh, get some ink going here in my pen. I'm going to start with 1 and 86 hundredths, and I'm going to subtract 14 hundredths. You probably know from working with me in the classroom that whenever we're doing dynamic subtraction, I always like to start with a warm up because I feel like for most of us, it takes us a minute for our brains to switch out of addition mode and into subtraction mode. So we're going to start with a static addition equation. That means no trade ins, no borrowing for those of us from the 70s. So we're looking here at our smallest category, of course, which is our hundredths. And in our hundredths, we have 6 minus 4. And 6 minus 4 will be 2. And then we can look at our tenths. And in our tenths, we have 8 minus 1, which will be 7. And then we're going to bring down our decimal point. And in our units, we have 1 minus 0, and that is 1. So our answer is 1 and 72 hundredths. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do one that does have a trade-in, that does have some borrowing going on. Let's do 3 and 42 hundredths minus 1 and 18 hundredths. So now we see that in our smallest category, in our hundredths place, we do not have enough hundredths in order to complete this subtraction. We're asked to take away 8 from 2. Now, this is the part where I stop and remind you that if you are still working on mastering dynamic subtraction without decimals, with whole numbers, that I would strongly recommend you continue practicing dynamic subtraction with whole numbers until it feels automatic to you, because dynamic subtraction is a little tricky until you have really mastered it. Lots of practice is the key there to that mastery. Okay, back to our hundredths. So I only have 2 hundredths here. I don't have enough to take away 8. How can I get more hundredths? Yes, I'm going to have to come and knock on the door of my tenths. And in the language that I learned when I was in second and third grade was borrow a tenth. But you guys know them as trade-ins. So we're going to take one of these tenths and just imagine in your mind that you can take that tenth and trade it in for 10 hundredths. So if I take those 10 hundredths and add them to my 2 hundredths, how many hundredths will I have now? I will have 12. So 12 minus 8 that's an equation I can do. 12 minus 8 will give me 4. Now, when we go to subtract our tenths, we have something important to remember here. Yes, we've taken away one of those 4 tenths. We only have 3 left. So now we have to think about 3 minus 1, and that will be 2. And then we bring down our decimal point, and then in our units, we have 3 minus 1. We can do that, and our answer will be 2 and 24 hundredths. Now, your parents and I had learned when we did dynamic subtraction to handle that trade-in with a few extra marks. So I'm just going to quickly erase my answer here and show you what that would look like, because you are welcome to use those little marks if they're helpful to you. But I find that most of you don't need them. You are more than capable of carrying this information in your, the fancy term for this is your working memory. You're more than capable of carrying this in your mind, but if the little marks are helpful to you, you're welcome to use them. So the way that I learned to do this when I was your age was 2 minus 8. Uh-oh, can't do that. So I come over to the tenths, and I'm going to draw a line through my 4 to show that I've taken something away from that 4. And I'm going to take one of those tenths away, and that's going to leave me with 3. So I've made a little mark here so I can remember that. Now that 1/10, I'm still trading that in my mind into 10 hundredths, but I'm going to add a little 1 here to show that I now have 12 hundredths. Okay, so that may help you remember, but honestly, most of you don't need that. Again, 12 minus 8 is 4. Then I have to remember I'm using this 3. 3 minus 1 is 2. Bring down your decimal. 3 minus 1 again is 2. There you go. Okay, so as I continue, I'm not going to be using those little marks, but again, it's not wrong if you want to use them. Okay, let's get rid of these and let's do just a couple more together. The erasing is not as straightforward. Okay, let's take 478 thousandths minus 192 thousandths. Okay, and let's start with our smallest category, which is the thousandths place. And we have 8 minus 2, and that'll be 6. And then in my hundredths place, I have 7 minus 9. Can I do that? No, I don't have enough hundredths to complete this subtraction. So I'm going to come over to my tenths place. I'm going to take one of those tenths. And so I'll have to remember when I come back to the tenths that I no longer have 4 here. I'm going to have 3 now. And that tenth that I take, I'm going to trade in for 10 hundredths. And so that will give me how many hundredths total? 10 hundredths plus this 7 give me 17 hundredths. And now I can complete the subtraction. 17 hundredths minus 9, yeah, will give me 8. Now I had to remember something important here with my tenths. Yes, I don't have 4 tenths anymore. Now I only have 3 tenths. And 3 minus 1 is 2. Bring down my decimal point. 0 minus 0 is 0. So my answer is 286 thousandths. Okay, one more. Let's do 4 and 47 hundredths minus 2 and 83 hundredths. Okay, looking at my hundredths place, I have 7 minus 3. That'll be 4. And now I'm going to look at my tenths place. I have 4 minus 8. Uh-oh, I won't be able to do that. How can I get more tenths so that I can complete this subtraction? Yeah, I'm going to go over to my unit. And I can take one of those units and trade it in for 10 tenths. But I'll have to remember when I get back to those units that I don't have 4 anymore. I'm only going to have 3 now. That unit traded in for 10 tenths. 10 tenths plus the 4 tenths I already have here makes 14 tenths. And 14 minus 8, yeah, that's going to be 6. And then I bring down my decimal point. Now I have something important to remember here. Yep, I only have 3 units left. 3 minus 2 is 1. And so my answer is 1 and 64 hundredths. Okay, have fun practicing your dynamic subtraction with decimals.